All right, folks, welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us in the conversation today. Wanted to have a first conversation with all of you, my online culture crew, and big shout out to my online culture crew. Yes, 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 and y'all know how I'm feeling about you, and I appreciate y'all so much for joining us today for these discussions. But first and foremost, big shout out to all of those who've submitted some information for us about our segment. I'm going to talk a little bit more later on about our segment, but thank you for those submissions that we just received over the weekend. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's jump right into these conversations, folks, because I'm watching how this story is continuing to develop around the attack on Paul Pelosi, the husband of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, that happened just a few days ago in San Francisco. And when we look at the attack, folks, here, take a look at this. His attack highlights rising fears of political violence. And this is what I want to key in on. This is what I want to key in on. Nancy Pelosi has been the target of GOP threats for at least 20 years. She is probably the most powerful woman in the Democratic Party. She's been in a stalwart of democracy, of democratic politics for years. And so she has often been the brunt of threats from GOP, but nothing quite like this. Now, we saw on January the 6th when those pro-Trump rally participants, stormed the Capitol, calling for Nancy Pelosi, along with other lawmakers, but they were calling for Nancy Pelosi and essentially calling for her death. And we also know that there have been a number of protesters who entered her office on that day to try to just damage the office as much as he can. And then on the flip side, while all that was happening, we have now seen the footage of Nancy Pelosi being in that undisclosed location while all this is going on with Chuck Schumer and other lawmakers, and how she was moving around, trying to get things done, trying to make sure that other people in Congress, in both the Senate and the House, were staying safe as a result of that situation. So she's always kind of had this threat looming over her. But again, nothing quite like this. This strikes home, and I'm not using that as a pun, but I'm just saying it is so close because it's in your residence. And we talked about a little bit of this last week, how this is so scary. Can you imagine someone coming into your home doing damage like this? Now there's more details about what happened when 42-year-old David Pape decided to go into the home of Paul and Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco. And actually, Mr. Pelosi was actually injured. He suffered a skull fracture. He had to get surgery done in San Francisco over the weekend. But can you imagine you as the police officer being called to the home of the Pelosi residence, seeing this situation play out? You get there, and before the suspect decides to give himself up and surrender, he attacks Paul Pelosi with a hammer right there in front of the police. So, and of course, he almost beats him to death. Prior to that moment of the attack, he was calling for Nancy and saying, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" And they found that David Pape is a conspiracy theorist. He's a far right winger. He's a guy who has been drinking the Kool-Aid, as they say, about Nancy Pelosi, about the state of our economy, the state of our politics, of our political space, and so much more. So this is so concerning on so many levels. But I want to share with you what the reports have said about this situation, because this is just one, and this is a very horrific attack. And it's, again, it's something that Mr. Pelosi did not, was fatally wounded in this attack, but he's 82 years old. He gets hit in the head with a hammer. So I know there's great concern about him being able to really fully recover from this attack. But this is just one of a number of attacks on this situation. Let me just share with you what we learned about this ongoing rising political violence that we're seeing in this country. And here it is. Take a look at this, folks. In a review by the New York Times earlier this year of more than 75 indictments of people charged with threatening lawmakers since 2016, more than a third of the cases involve Republican or pro-Trump individuals threatening Democrats or Republicans they found insufficiently loyal to the former president. Nearly a quarter of the cases were Democrats threatening Republicans, many of them threats driven by anger over lawmaker support for Mr. Trump and his policies, including Republican attempts to appeal the Affordable Care Act and one of his Supreme Court nominees, Brett Kavanaugh. Wow. So we're seeing this, folks. We are really, really seeing a situation here where there are these attacks. All right, I'm going to go to you, my online culture crew, to get your thoughts on this in a moment. But I wanted to share this with you, and then we'll hear from you. Take a look at this quote. This is from an associate professor at Chapman University who has studied extremist groups and violence for more than 20 years. His name is Peter Simi. And Peter Simi said, quote, when we see things like what we saw happen last night, and this was last week he spoke on this, at the speaker's home, when we see things like plots to kidnap governors, this is what's related to the governor of Michigan, when we see overt acts ramping up, we saw that on January 6th, we see, frankly, take a look at what he said, folks. He said, we see, frankly, a whole host of indicators suggesting that we're really at a crisis point. This is why I wanted to pull this quote, because I wanted us to really think about this. We are at a crisis point in our politics right now, that folks are seeking out lawmakers simply because they disagree, simply because, and this is not a simple thing. I'm not going to say simply. I also say because they disagree, because they don't like the direction that these lawmakers are taking on various issues. They are seeking out lawmakers, folks, and they're looking to hurt them or outright kill them. Very, very scary. And when we think about other countries, when we think about what's going on in the Middle East and how they handle things, when we think about the continent of Africa, when we think about other countries where governments constantly go through these constant transitions, right? They use the term stabilizing the government. We want to stabilize the country. Often when America goes into other foreign lands, they use that terminology, this is a stabilization effort because things are so uncertain, because things are standing on shaky ground. This is the case in America. So we're not talking about overseas anymore. We're talking about America. We're talking about the land of the free, the home of the brave. We're talking about the quote unquote, the most exceptional country in the world. And now we're seeing a little bit more and more each year a rise of political violence. The type of violence that you would see that we would talk about if this was Egypt or the Middle East, the type of violence that we would see in other parts of the world, it's happening here at home. What's your take on this? You should join me in a conversation, post your comments on the platforms that we're streaming on, YouTube, Facebook. I would love to hear what you have to say and get your thoughts on this. And let me just make sure that the suspect in this attack, he was charged with, take a look, folks, assault and attempted kidnapping. Federal prosecutors have actually filed charges on Monday against this man that the police said broke into the House Speaker's home. And these charges were just announced within the last hour. So they are proceeding. They are moving forward with charging David Pape with this, with very, very serious crimes, especially as he committed crimes against a major lawmaker. Now, it was also reported, as we get your thoughts on this, folks, this was reported by The Guardian in July of 2022, where members of the House of Representatives will now receive an upgrade of $10,000 to upgrade their security at their homes. This is what was discussed back in the summer in the face of rising threats against lawmakers. So they put more money into the security efforts to beef up security. But will it matter? People are very creative. They know how to get information off of the online. They know where people live. All of those things. All of those things. All right, let's go to the phone. Let's go to, I was going to say, let's go to the phone lines, but let's go to the chat line. Radio, folks, radio world. Let's go to the chat lines and hear what folks got to say. Kicking it off with my guy, you don't like my music. You say political violence is called terrorism. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a form of terrorism. This is a form of terrorism, folks. And if our political officials, and I will say this, if our political officials aren't safe to do their job, right? And people have the quote unquote the gall, they have the tenacity, they have just the confidence to pull off something like this, right? Without fear of consequences. That's the thing. That if you do this, are you going to feel the full brunt and weight of the United States government? David Patton is going to feel the full brunt of and weight of this government as a result of this. But you got to also think about, too, there are a number of Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and other Republicans who are creating the environment for this. And see, here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about, and y'all tell me what you think. I don't think a lot of people understand that once you let this violence out of the box, it does not go where you think it will go. It does not just stop with one person or one group of people. It spreads. It spreads. You know, it spreads all over. So you might think, oh, I'm immune to it. They won't hurt me. But we don't know. So even for black folks, we can't say, well, that's a Democrat thing. That's a white thing. This is a thing for everybody to be concerned about, because someone is not happy, will not be happy with a stance that any political leader takes. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, there are Republicans that piss off other Republicans, as there are Democrats that piss off other Democrats. And so when we open a door, when we start to add fuel to the fire and gaslight the situation and say, oh, man, the Republicans are saying stuff now and all of that stuff, you best to be careful, because that might come right to your doorstep. You might be opening the door for you to be attacked. So you don't like my music? You right on time with that. Thank you, bro. Mike V, my guy, you said the right winger who threatened Congressman Omar was also recently sentenced as well. Good point. Mike, thank you for bringing us that into the discussion. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, a black woman. And I said this last week. So we can say, oh, that's Pelosi and boom, boom, boom. But what if somebody tries to attack the Obamas? Right? What if that happens? What if somebody tries to attack James Clyburn down in South Carolina? Right? What if somebody attacks any one of the black lawmakers? Hell, what if somebody tries to attack Sister Ketanji Brown Jackson? See what I'm saying? See, we can't act as if it can't happen. Now we got to have conversations about this. And as this midterm's getting closer and closer, we're going to have to look at this. Real talk. Mike, thank you for bringing that to the discussion, bro. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said we are at a crisis point. Absolutely. In the human race. We are heading in territories we have not seen since the Dark Ages. This is some Game of Thrones. And look, I watch Game of Thrones. My wife is a huge Game of Thrones fan. You know what I mean? And this is if you watch the show, it's all about power, right? It's all about what's happening in the seven kingdoms and who's got the power here and who, but they're always plotting. They're always trying to figure out how to get their hands into power. And guess what? That's what we have seen in other countries when it comes to political violence, right? That one group comes up, they rise up for the moment, and then another group is right there behind them trying to figure out how to get them out of that seat of power. See, in America, we have certain laws in place. We have certain processes in place. We have the checks and balance systems of the House and the Senate, and you got Congress, you got the executive branch, you got the judicial branch. But what if those branches of government start to not do what they're supposed to do, or they only do what they are politically beholden to? What happens then? Then we start to see that you can be violent, a perpetrator of violence. It might not be prosecuted in one case, but then another perpetrator of violence can be prosecuted to the full extent in another case because of their political affiliations. This is the concern. And then once you start to do that, now you do create like a Game of Thrones situation, because now it's like one group versus the other. Well, how many groups in this country, and Real Brooklyn, talk to me on this, bro, and share your thoughts. How many groups in this country are at odds with one another, or could potentially be at odds with one another? Because we got the haves and the have-nots. We got the liberals versus the progressives. We got the Democrats versus the Republicans, right? We got black against white. We got white against this group, right? We got people that live in one area code versus another people that live in another area code. We got states versus state heads. So we got state lawmakers here, state lawmakers there. We got people of one skin color versus you have white Latinos and Afro Latinos. You think about all the differences that can be exploited as a result of us being different, having different ideologies, a different view of ourselves, a different view of the world. You think about all these groups that could be exploited and how they can be gaslit to create a situation where they're going against each other. I want you to think about that. I got to take a quick pause. When we come back, I'm going to take more of your comments. Let's continue to have this conversation. I'm loving the insight that y'all are bringing. So let's continue to have this discussion. Stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about this case of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul Pelosi, who has been violently attacked in his home just a few days ago as a result of a pro-right-winger, David Papp, 42-year-old David Papp, who wanted to do real harm and possibly even kill the House Speaker when he entered their home on a on an early morning this weekend. And it has caused a lot of conversation about where we are in the state of our political affairs in this country. And more importantly, this idea that there is a real concern about the growing epidemic of political violence that we may be seeing in America, a concern that was so far off, I think, from the American psyche and the consciousness that we always thought that we would be protected by some level of civility. We would be protected by the laws, that we would be protected as a result of everything that we have in place. And now we're seeing, and we are at a place, folks, where political officials, political leaders are being are being attacked in their home. In their home. So let me go back to you, my online culture crew, and get your take on where we are with this situation, because we need to talk about it. We can't brush over this. And I think for Black folks in this country, we cannot get so comfortable in thinking that it would never happen to us. We just can't get comfortable, folks. Again, I'm going back to something in Truth is Power. I saw what you posted as well in the chat, brother. You said, what if it was Michelle or Barack or Maxine Waters? That's a great one. You know, Auntie Maxine in her 80s, still doing the work. But is she a vulnerable target? And I'm trust and believe, folks. I'm not wishing no ill will on anyone. I'm just bringing this up because we should be concerned about it. We should be concerned about it. Corinna, you said something. You said it's unfortunate this has happened, but if January 6th didn't put any urgency under the Democrats to legislate accordingly, then what will, aside from the pressure we the people force upon them? Then what will, aside from the pressure we the people force upon them? Corinna, you know, and I know that you cannot. What we saw on January the 6th is something that I have never seen in my life. I don't think any one of us have ever seen in our lifetime. That situation has to be remedied. There has to be something. And I don't know what it is just yet, but there has to be something that needs to be done to cut the head off of that situation. But you're absolutely right. See, and here's the take, and this is why I say, you know, next week we got our a midterm election. You know, in 2024 we go back to the polls for the president. This is going to be a very challenging time for America over these next 2 years. We already talked about what happened with the polls and how polls are being put on high alert because this election here is so pivotal and potentially volatile for so many groups of people, for so many states, right? But when we see this warning not fully being taken seriously, we need to be concerned about that. We even if you don't ride with the Republicans, right? You say, all right, well, I don't ride with the Republicans, nor do I ride with the Democrats. You can't look at a situation like these attacks on Governor Whitmer, Nancy Pelosi's husband, on other people, January 6th, and you can't act like, oh man, that don't bother me. There's no way. How could any one of us say that should not be a concern? This is a great concern because America has always prided itself on its political standing. It's, you know, scholars would call democracy the American experiment, right? Because we're still testing it out. It's still pretty relatively new compared to other forms of government and how America does governance, right? This idea for the people, by the people, the people's will, the people's representative, all of these ideas are genuinely new, right? Because most of them dealt with aristocracy. Most of them dealt with some level of dictatorship and all of those things. But this is new. So it's been considered an experiment. So some things work and some things don't work. And we have always been told by President Biden and other presidents that it is the belief in the system, the hope of the people that will determine the success of the system, right? It's what the people put in. Like what I've heard from President Biden, it's like basically, if the democracy will only work if the people get involved. It'll only work if what we only will get out of it what we put into it. That's the place that we are with our governance. That if we don't put nothing into it, we're going to get nothing out of it. But then at the same time, we have been lulled to sleep because we have been made to think that the government is going to take care of itself, not really understanding that you can have institutions, you can have policies, but you need the will of the people in order for this whole situation to work, in order for there to be a driver for the institutions, for the policies, for government to work. There needs to be an educated consensus, educated citizenry at the root of everything. There needs to be an active citizenry at the root of everything. So you need the people. But if the people are told that their government officials are the ones to think of all of the ideas, all of the solutions, figure it all out, so we only have a few hundred people in government to dictate the future of millions of us in the United States. Do you think that they can think about every little thing that happens in our lives that's happening as a result of all of these things? Do you think that just a few hundred people can truly do it without us being involved? I mean, just think on this with me. Do you really think that that can happen? Because I don't see that happening. I know that that's what we've been told. I know that's what we've been told to believe, but I'm saying to you today, I don't see that happen without us being fully involved. All right, let's go back. Let's go back. Let me hear from Chris V. Chris, you said, remember back in 2014 when that guy jumped the White House fence and made it all the way to the front door of the White House before getting apprehended? Luckily, the Obamas weren't there. Yes, and Chris, remember how many times, bro, and I'm glad you brought that up. How many times did the Obamas were kind of in near misses of coming in face to face with danger, right? As a result of their situation. How many times do you think that happened? That's probably happened way more. And I mean, I just read a few incidents where that happened, but they were, I mean, I'm sure they were hundreds of times. Let's not even talk about the fact that when President Obama first got into office in 2018, the rise of guns just exploded as a result of that, because there were all of these folks that foresaw that that his election was going to bring about the end of America. So we saw people getting in bunkers. We saw people getting guns. We saw people joining militias to protect themselves and their families and their assets and their property. And I mean, we see all of this, and this is still happening, folks. Don't think that this is not happening. This is still happening. This is not being reported on the mainstream as it once was, but it's still happening, even with the rise of Trump. These things are still happening. And I'm saying this just not to create a dark world, but to bring us into the light of understanding, so that way we don't think that we're not in the dark about things. All right, let's go back to the, let me hear from Robin. Robin, you said, if the House Speaker's husband can be attacked, what will prevent neighbors from attacking neighbors due to a difference in political views? This needs to be taken seriously. Facts. Facts, Robin. Robin, I'm right there with you, sis. I am right there with you. So this situation could potentially open a door for neighbor against neighbor, right? I mean, you know who you're in your neighborhood. Imagine if you do live in a neighborhood. I used to live in a neighborhood where the mayor of Baltimore lived, right in the same neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? But I always crossed my mind, like anybody could. Now, of course, you got police and all of those things. You know, he got police presence and near his home and all of that stuff, but it doesn't mean that somebody wouldn't try. That even those of us who live next to political leadership, we might be an innocent bystander. We might get caught up in the fire. We might, you know what I mean? And so we got to really think about that. Good point. Real Brooklyn, you said, Farajii, always felt that our total reliance on government is the root of most of our problems. We have given government too much power because of our selfish needs. They are in the driver's seat. Well, that's the part about it, Real Brooklyn. That's the part I think is supposed to be the one of the shiny elements of our democracy, right? That out of a few, out of many, come a few can determine and dictate our, you know, what we need to fulfill our interests. And you're right. You're right. I think you said selfish. I want to throw in another word. I think we've gotten lazy. I think we've just gotten lazy in believing that the government is going to continue to, you know, fulfill every single need. And so we don't even really have the desire. I mean, a lot of us, when we talk about government, yes, we talk about government, but we kind of talk about it like outside of its impact on our personal lives, right? When we talk about laws and policy, we're like, man, that's crazy. But we go back to doing our thing, not understanding the implications and ramifications of certain policy until we get into a situation and then it's brought to our attention, whether you buying a house or buying a car or you trying to open up a business or something, or you know what I mean? You trying to file your taxes and then you like, oh, there's a new tax law, or oh, I didn't know about this, or I didn't know about that. We don't know until it gets there. And I think there's a design effort. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, folks. But I think that to some degree, you know, the powers that be may want us to keep us clouded about what's really going on, because if we wake up to what's going on in our government, if we wake up to the serious issues that our government faces and our government don't tell us the truth about those serious issues, and we're left in the blind, and then the government do us wrong by denying us the truth of the moment. So they're leading, they're in the blind. So it's the blind leading the blind. And guess what happens? We both fall in the ditch. The government's saying, oh, this is the good thing that we denied the American people the truth about what's going on in this issue and that issue. We got to keep them playing. We got to keep them going to the beach during the summer, keep them going on cookouts. But over here, just some, you know, this thing is falling apart. Over there, yeah, we're losing the war in this part of the earth. Over here, yeah, the economy, but let's keep them preoccupied. Then celebrities are thrown into our face. Then other stuff that keeps us preoccupied. We talking on and I'm not saying that we got to talk hard about the issues every single day, because I get it, trust and believe. I totally understand. But we've gotten to a place here in our culture where we don't even want to have, you know, it's like we have this, don't talk to me. It's like when I see some people, right? And I know some people might feel this way, but I don't agree with it. Some people say, well, I don't watch the news at all. I haven't watched the news, taken in the news, watched the local news, don't watch CNN, don't watch nothing like, I don't watch the news because it's too violent. Okay, I understand that element, but what about just being updated about what's going on in the world? Do you not read the newspaper? Okay, you don't have to watch the news. Do you read any newspapers? You read New York Times, LA Times, USA Today, Baltimore Sun. Do you read the Final Call? Do you read what are you, where are you getting your information? How do you know what's going on in the world around you? How do you know what the urgencies are? How do you keep informed? Or do you just want to live in a bubble? We just want to live in a silo, in a tunnel. I don't want no. If it ain't good news, I don't want it. Well, I wish life was that easy. You know what I'm saying? Life comes with bad news. Life comes with bumps. Life comes with ups and downs. So I get it. but there got to be a balance. You don't have to be a total consumer of the bad, but you at least need to know that bad exists. And if you're in the denial of that bad exists, how can we operate in this world using the best intelligence? How do you teach your children? How do you go through your day if you don't recognize that bad and evil exist in the world? Bigger conversation. Bigger conversation. Corinna, you said add willfully ignorant to lazy. All right, we adding it on. I love it. I love it. So we selfish, we getting lazy, and now we're willfully ignorant. That's why we rely on our government so much. Let me see here. My guy, Charles Magruder, you said, yes, voting is the best tool to save this democratic experiment. It's one of the tools. It's one of the tools. The real best tool for saving democracy is having an educated citizenry. If you don't know how your government works, what are you voting for? If you don't know the implication of decisions, what are you voting for? If you don't know the roles that certain positions play in government, what are you voting for? If you don't understand why certain issues are high priority and why certain issues are low priority, then what are you voting for? See, none of the vote is an outgrowth of education. You vote because you're becoming more of an active, engaged citizen. But if you don't have no reference, if you don't have no base knowledge, if you don't know anything or have an interest of knowing anything about your government, then how can you go to the polls and vote? That's why in every voter campaign, there's that element. The first element is voter education. Well, why do we need voter education? Not just to be told that, oh, Black people have died for your vote, or that people have sacrificed for us to vote, and that's true. But voter education also comes down to who are your representatives? Who are the people that's standing in front of you who are asking for your vote? Why are they saying that this issue is in this issue and this issue is top priority? What does that have? What impact will that have on your personal life, on your money, on your school choices, on your health care? See, if you don't have that level of education, then what are you voting for? If you're just voting just because you think the person is cool, that's all well and good. There's a little bit of cool factor in voting today, but that can't be the basis. Otherwise, you might be voting for somebody that's cool, but against your own interests. You know, people do have an ability today, especially in our culture, to redefine themselves. I never forget. One of the people who served as the communications persons, and I think it was for President Bush, or President Trump, rather. He worked for Trump, and I think his name is Ari Fleischer, but he worked for Trump, and he only worked for him for a couple of years. He decided to leave the role, and then he redefined himself. I think he started writing books. I think he started working in the private sector and all of that stuff. And then he wants to be like this guy. And it's like, if you didn't know any better, you would think that a person like him, who is able to redefine himself, is cool because you don't know his history. You don't know his background. That's for anybody that was a part of an administration that wasn't good for the American people, right? They come out, they live for Kellyanne Conway. They can leave and they can redefine themselves, put out a book. You see them as a talking head. They're talking about democracy and all of those things. But what about their history? But if you don't know their history and you vote for a person who is able to redefine themselves when they come before you in public spaces, then you would think you're making a good vote. Oh, come on, no. That's not enough. You have to know as much as you can about who you're voting for, and more importantly, the issues that you're standing for. The last thing about the voting piece, to your point, brother Charles, is you have to have a stance on the issues. Sure, the governor might say it, and the governor of your state might say it, the congressperson might say it, but if you don't know the issues yourself, then what are you voting for? See, that's the voter education. That's the voter education. And so now, as we see this rise of political violence in this country, and as we see scary moments like what happened with the Pelosi attack, we have to be very clear about where we stand, who we're standing with. We got to be clear about what's going on in the country around us. And as we go to the polls, God willing, y'all are going to the polls either this week, if you're doing early voting, doing the next week. But who and what are you voting for? Where do you stand? As adults, those are the big issues that we have to often ask ourselves. This is not the time for us to be on the fence unless we just don't know much about a situation, about an issue. But if you have a view, if you have a stance, and you believe in what you say, you believe in that stance, then guess what? Then you should make your voice known. It's that simple. And we need to be engaged, because this American experiment called democracy will not sustain itself. If you think that America is a place that is worthy to be saved, if you think there are some redeeming value in what we are all a part of, if you think that our children can possibly benefit from all that we are a part of, then I would say, then you should go to vote. You should stand up against certain things. And that we should take this rise of political violence very seriously, because not only it threatens the life of the persons involved, or does it even threaten this comfortable space that we find ourselves in our relationship to our government, but it threatens the sense of sanity and safety that we think we have in this country. And if once that is disrupted, folks, we're about to walk around looking like a bunch of paranoid people, where we can't trust our neighbor, we can't talk to the businessman, we can't talk to the person in the school. We're going to start living in silos. And I don't know about you, but I'm not comfortable with living in fear. We got to take a stand. We have to take a stand. So I appreciate all of you for checking in, Karen. You said 100 Farajii. We the people must participate in our local government to elevate change at the state and federal levels beyond voting. Our elected officials need help. Absolutely, Karen. Thank you. Shalinda, you said, well, maybe they should just bring back Schoolhouse Rock. Facts. Facts. Right. R.A. Fleischer. Thank you, Joe. My producer checked me. He worked for George W. Bush, not for Trump. Yep. Thank you, sir. Absolutely. Absolutely. So these are the things that we need to consider. And I just wanted to throw it out there so that way we can become engaged and educated citizens and not just walking around here hoping, wishing upon a star, thinking some mystery God is going to save us. If anybody's going to save this American experiment, well, it's going to be Americans. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, Here on the Black Star Network, every week we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Let's talk a little bit about change, and let's go into the world of Afrofuturism. And I know, B, I wanted to have this conversation with you because this is your wheelhouse, right? This is what you love. You actually have created through your music, through the films that you are working on. This is important that we have a discussion to look at this idea of Afrofuturism, right? Like, what does Black people look like in the future? What does that mean, right? And so when we look at Black Panther, even though it's a product of a larger, major, Marvel Studios, right? We see Black Panther, but I think it speaks to where there is this sentiment of what is the future of Black folks. And this is the beautiful thing I think about like Black Panther, the whole idea. Of course, the movie came out Friday. Here's the numbers around this, folks. Take a look at this. Just check this out. $180 million in its opening weekend. Y'all, I want y'all to understand. I want y'all to understand how powerful.
Domestically.
That's domestically. 330 million globally.
Right.
Now, here's the thing, though, folks. Just to put this in perspective, some movies are out weeks at a time, where they work up to 330 million, say after 3-4 weeks in the theaters, right? 330 million, that's their final, that's like their final number. This is the first number. And so we're seeing something, B and Brother Michael, that I don't know whether it's because of the late, great Chadwick Boseman. Folks wanted to see how the movie was going to play around, how the movie is going to speak to that. If it's because of Afrofuturism, because there is a number of conversations about the value and significance, of course, of this new reality. But what do you make of it? What do you make of it? And then let's talk about the politics behind it. But what do you make of the success of this second film without its main character?
Black Panther was always more than just Black Panther, like when we are focusing on the idea of Wakanda, when we focus on the idea of a Black world, it's more than just one person. All right. So kudos to Black people around the globe for being able to understand that. Kudos to the director, to the production company, who is able to understand that, And so what we have here, Farajii, is not necessarily a phenomenon, all right? This is what we do. We show up, we show out. Our dollars reign supreme. There is no dollar that is stronger than the Black dollar, all right? That's why it's important for us to be able to circulate it. And that's why it's important for our enemy to get it out of our community. All right. Because there is no dollar that's stronger than ours. So what I see, is deeper than us going to see this film. The beauty of Afrofuturism, is a 360 component, because we don't just go to see it. All right. We go to be it.
Oh, there we go. I'm feeling that one.
Okay. So that is the essence of Afrofuturism, and it is not new. Okay. It's not new. It's just true. If you ever marvel at the survivability of Black people, you can blame Afrofuturism. There is no future without Black people, the way there was no planet without Black people. So,
right.
so let's just started there. You know, the revolutionary act of Afrofuturism, you know, goes along with Black sci-fi. It's important within our white supremacist culture, you know, to understand where we exist separate and distinct from that culture. All right.
Yeah.
So when we deal with the difference between sci-fi and Black sci-fi, all right, there's a thread of a lifestyle that is not, you're not on another planet. You're literally here on Earth dealing with the effects of slavery, dealing with the effects of the transatlantic slave trade, dealing with the balance of this power that's within all of us, you know? So it's like, so I think the part that we connect with in reference to the film and Afrofuturism, you know, is we are spirit, we are mind, we are body. Afrofuturism, Black sci-fi includes all of these. Like we're not in space dealing with this. We're on Saratoga, we're on Crenshaw, we're on 88th and Vine, you know, dealing with actualizing our future. Because, you know, unlike our counterparts, we are literally still here in a hostage situation and have to explain it every day.
Right.
This time travel that we are forced into from the moment we wake up, you know, it is a part of all of our Afrofuturistic lifestyles, you know?
Yeah.
So I argue that Afrofuturism is not a genre, is not literature. It is how we survive the unsurvivable, because that's literally what we do every day.
I love it. Hey, B, I'm all in it. I'm all in it. And you are the first person, just for full transparency, I never really considered Afrofuturism until I actually literally met you and Riz, your husband. Like, and folks, when I'm saying that for real, because, you know, you don't, again, this idea of a Black future. Y'all remember the Jetsons? There were no Black folks in the Jetsons, man. There was no Black folks in the Jetsons in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when you're talking about a Black future with a world full of technology, when you're talking about a future with the world full of power, when you're talking about a future with the world full of organized structure, you don't necessarily, and this is because of the conditioning that we as Black folks in this country have undergone, we don't see Black people being a part of that world. That's just right. And I know people say, well, it's been in the comic books for years, but you're right. But this is a whole different level. Once you bring something from the books into film, right, it's felt on a different level. And brother Michael, I want to get your take on this because you know, the Rolling Stone just put out a piece earlier today. It says Black Panther: Wakanda Forever isn't just a sequel, it's an MCU geopolitical game changer. Look at this. That's our sister Letitia Wright playing Shuri during the funeral of T'Challa in the film.
Right.
They said that Ryan Coogler's blockbuster draws from the comic superhero mythos and real-life revolutions to make a strong anti-colonialist argument. It also resets the cinematic universe's political balance in a big way. Now, here's the funny part about this, Brother Michael, and you rocking the shirt. But here's the funny part about this. I've actually seen Black scholars who say that this film is trash politically.
Well, they ain't do their research. That's part of the problem. So let me preface this by saying I did 3 months of research on the film Black Panther and the Black Panther comic book before I did my lectures on the film Black Panther, because I have lectures that I've done on the film. One of them was almost 3 hours, and it's available on my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So I did deep research because after I saw the film in February 2018, even though at the time I've been studying history, what was it, 25 years or 26 years at the time, I knew I was not qualified to do lectures on the film and really talk about the film. So I did deep research. Everybody was not that responsible. Let me put it politely like that, to do that. So first of all, when we do Afrofuturism, we're dealing with science fiction and fantasy meeting cultures of the African diaspora. And we see this represented in the film. Now, Wakanda, even though it's a fictitious place, a fictitious African country in Central East Africa, and over time, the location changes, but it's somewhere around Rwanda, Uganda. Even though it's a fictitious African country, Wakanda is a real word. We see Wakanda in the Omaha Ponca and Sioux Indian Native American languages. It means possesses secret powers. It's also in the Osage language as well, and it's in reference to the Osage god, their deity. Okay, Wakanda. There are different spellings of it. One of the most popular is Wakanda, which you see in the film. In Wisconsin, there is a Wakanda Water Park in Wisconsin. It's spelled the same way as in the movie. It's been there for decades. There are schools across the country, like in Nebraska, named Wakanda. Now, it's also a Kikongo word. Kikongo is a Bantu language. And in Kikongo, it's in reference to family. One of the things that's so important about the film is that when we look at Wakanda in the movie, the world thinks that Wakanda is a third world country, but Wakanda uses technology to hide the fact of how technologically advanced that they are, to keep colonizers from coming in and plundering them and raping the country. Okay, so one of the reasons why the film, the first one, did so well, and it was #1 for 5 weeks here in the U.S. and did $1.4 billion worldwide, is because it wasn't another slave movie, #1. And even though slavery is part of our history, ain't the only part of our history. #2, we got to see African people controlling a nation, controlling natural resources. We got to see 11 different African cultures infused into the film Black Panther. So Ruth Carter, who's the costume designer, and she was also the costume designer on the film Malcolm X. She studied African cultures for 6 months and infused 11 different African cultures into the film. So we see the Mercy from Ethiopia in there. We see the Zulu from South Africa. Queen Ramonda, played by Angela Bassett. The hat that she wears, the flat hat, that's from the Zulu. That's a hat that Zulu women wear, and it was largely Zulu royalty or wealthy women that will wear it. The rings that we see the Dora Milaje wear around their necks, okay, that's from an African culture as well. And the Dora Milaje, who are the Dora Milaje means it means I forget, Dora Milaje, the adored ones. Dora Milaje means the adored ones, the African female warriors. They're based upon the Ogoji or the Ohozi in Dahomey. That's where they come from. Their costumes are inspired by the Maasai of Kenya. So when you look at the Maasai in Kenya, you'll see how their costumes reflect that. So it's a powerful movie, and you can use if you understand history, you can use the film Black Panther to teach African history to our people, teach it to our children. Because I did a lecture I did a presentation to 65th through 12th graders and their teachers, and broke down the film and the African cultural influences in the film and how it relates to history. And I was explaining to the teachers how they can use the enthusiasm of the film Black Panther to teach African history and African American history to their children. Okay, and I saw the new film on Saturday. And one of the big things, one of the most important things about this also is that different African-American organizations have been buying out theaters and using this as fundraisers also. So in 2018, a lot of Simple Simon ass people on social media said, "Oh, Disney making all this movie, black people ain't making no money." No, black people made money off of it then, and they're making money off of it now. You just didn't make any money. You didn't position yourself properly. Okay, success is where preparation meets opportunity. I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years. My degree's in business administration. It's not in history. I'm a historian, but my degree is in business. Okay, success is where preparation meets opportunity. You knew the movie was coming out for like 4 or 6 years, so you didn't position yourself properly. The new movie is phenomenal, and it brings into it another aspect when we do a Mesoamerican culture, Latino culture, when we deal with Tanakh Hereta, who plays Prince Namor. And in the comic books, Namor was whiter than white. But here you get another an indigenous culture as well. And I'm not going to give away no spoilers, but there's a scene where he talks about how, in this movie, we find out that vibranium exists in his underworld country as well. Okay. Yep. And he talks about how now the world has found out about this, and now we have to protect ourselves from colonizers coming to take the natural resource, coming to take the vibranium from his world as well. Okay, so it brings into this dynamic of colonizers colonizing and attacking indigenous people, Africans, Mesoamerica, the Aztecs, things like this. And there's an Aztec influence that we see in the film also. So it's a powerful movie. It's not perfect. None of these movies are. So the naysayers, if you don't like it, go make your own damn movie. But you ain't gonna do that.
First and foremost, brother Mike, you know how I feel. You know how I feel about when you break it down, brother. I appreciate you for breaking down the history and giving us some insight on that, because I think that's important. And you know, when we talked about before the movie was released last week, we talked about it, and I shared with people, brother Michael and B. Look, this is a black man. Now, I don't know if we can talk about this enough, that Ryan Coogler took this film, this story, and he brought it to the screen.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yep. And he rewrote it. He rewrote the story. Now, he rewrote. You talking about after Chadwick Boseman died? Because he had to rewrite the script after Chadwick Boseman died. He had to rewrite that script.
Right. Right.
He rewrite that.
Joe Robert Cole, his writing partner. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They had to rewrite the script. And you're talking about all of these different elements that they had to infuse to create the story of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I'm telling y'all, folks, go see the movie, because it's absolutely it is a phenomenal film on so many different levels. And so, you know, when you see it, it's like, you know, I get to a place now, brother Michael and B, that sometimes some of our people want to be so hard, so high, and so hard that, you know what, sometimes when something gives our people hope, gives our people a sense of you know, value, man, just let it go. You know, I know, look, man, it's Marvel. It's not the Smithsonian Institute putting out the film.
Well, what happens is good historians know how to take pop culture and take it to the next level and infuse the history into it and use it as a tool to reach the masses. Okay, the people who are whining and complaining, a lot of them are unhappy with themselves, and they don't want other people. They don't want Black people to be happy unless they are the reason for the happiness, and they can monetize the happiness.
Come
if
on,
they can
brother.
sell it to you, then they're all right. So they're saying more about themselves than they're saying about Marvel or Disney. But this is a powerful movie, and we need to take that and deal with the history surrounding all this, and use this to teach our people and teach our children also.
Absolutely, and you know, B, back to your point that you was making about colonialism, and what we're seeing. Like this movie right here I think it opens the door for us to have some very, very important conversations about our history, about colonialism, about the unity of Black and brown communities. It's like this film speaks on all of those things, about grief, about legacy. I mean, I don't want to give no spoilers away, but this film speaks to so many different pieces. And I think that if there's an opportunity to teach our people, to inspire our people, and to empower our people, I think we should take it, B. I think we should just take it, whether it comes from a movie, whether it comes from a comic book, or whether it comes from a news show, whatever the case may be, take it.
Yeah, like when The Matrix came out, all right, it created a splinter culture, all right, that understood deeper conspiracy, understood that we're all plugged in to a source that is not organic, and it's on the individual to unplug. All right. That's the greater messaging behind The Matrix, right? And so anyone who was a part of that Matrix generation changed and grew as a result of this fictional piece.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, Black Panther and The Matrix tell the same story. Okay, tell the same story. They all grossed about the same amount of money. All right. And so because at the end of the day, people are striving to connect to a source that is not white men.
Woo!
Even white people, okay,
Come on.
understand that there's a greater source that the supremest white man has yet to reveal. And so because of that, we have to continue the exploration, and so a lot of how this film was brought to us, right, had less to do with historical accuracy and more to do with cellular memory. Cellular memory you will not find in a book. You will remember it in your DNA. You'll feel it like deja vu. And Black people have an abundance of cellular memory. Our gut flora is amazing. We know what's happening. Even if there's no proof, we know for a fact that Trump is up to some shit. We know.
Right.
We know. We already know certain elements, even if we can't put our finger on the exact data. And so that's the part that has to be strengthened in order to exist in the Afrofuture without being a drone. Because you're not gonna die, all right? You might not lead with your thought though. And that's scary. The idea that if you exist, you'll be droned? No. So in order to not be droned, you have to some extent, step outside of your historical context that was written most likely by a man who was most likely sucking the patriarchy's dick and not the truth. You understand? And so until we get to that, to where we can understand what is written inside of our DNA, to actually be able to speak on that, to stand on that, and to build new nations off of that supreme wisdom, that right there is what Wakanda is. Wakanda is not a Bible verse that explains the metrics of Noah's Ark. You understand? Like, that's not what Wakanda is. Wakanda is a cellular memory of Ryan Coogler. Wakanda is a cellular memory of where we came from before our worst nightmare happened and we're living in, the post-traumatic effects of slavery and disenfranchisement from our language and our culture. We have to figure out a way in order to make ourselves whole again, and I don't think that reparation is ever going to come from an external source. That reparation has to come from an internal source of the cellular people.
And I think, to your point, B, when you're talking about you know, the cellular level of understanding, you're talking about having at least a reference point of history, understanding that all of our history is not always written in a book. All of our history is not always it can be found literally on the walls of some of the greatest pieces of stone. You know what I'm saying? From the pyramids and other places. So, you know, we have our history. We have made our mark literally all over this globe as Black people. Right. To show our level of supremacy, to show our level of our ability to our level of power. And that's one of the big things that you know, that we should keep in mind. I want to take just a couple of quick comments from our online culture crew, because a lot of folks are checking in. Everybody pretty much is saying the show.
And that's some follow-up comments also, but go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Melcon Huger, you said, I knew Black Panther was going to be done right because of the comic book. He's a beast. Absolutely. Absolutely. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you said, look, I think Afrofuturism has always been here. Wouldn't have music, art, and some folks who stole this genre and made money off of our culture. Elvis. Here's the real thing, Real Brooklyn. Elvis gave credit to Black folks when he got started. You can check the history. Elvis knew that he was taking his sound from the greats of like a B.B. King and others. He did that. He understood that, and he said it.
Right, because Little Richard said when Elvis first met him, he said Elvis called me the king. Okay.
Right.
Little Richard said, right. So yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Elvis he couldn't dance, and he was singing Black people's music. But he was a white man at a time when we couldn't get our music played on a lot of radio stations in the South, a lot of white-owned radio stations in the South. Okay, so that's you know, somebody like Elvis today, he wouldn't go anywhere. But yeah,
I mean, is that not Jack Harlow, Justin Bieber?
I was just about to think of like a Jack Harlow or Harry. What's it, Harry Styles?
Is that not Eminem? Harry Styles?
But we can get
Vanilla Ice. We
can get our, but it was even worse back then. But because we couldn't get our records played in, like with Little Richard, you know, and other artists, they would put out covers. So you know, I guess probably one of his first hits was Hound Dog. Well, that was sung by Big Mama Thornton, okay, who was an African American woman who doesn't really get a lot of credit. Elvis Presley, Hound Dog, that Elvis Presley made popular, was originally sung by a Black woman named Big Mama Thornton. All right. There's
now sung by Doja Cat. Shout out.
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was you know, because my parents taught me a lot about music, and because I grew up in Detroit, so you got to learn about Motown. I'm 51 years old, right? So there was a 33 and a third album that my parents bought me called The Roots of Rock and Roll, and it had all these old groups on there before white people copied their music. It had Chuck Berry and Fats Domino and Little Richard, all these different artists on there that white people copied and put out cover records on. And because Pat Boone put out a cover record of Tutti Frutti, sounded horrible. Copying Little Richard, it sounded horrible. All right, but this is how a lot of these people, you know, got the money stolen, got ripped off from a lot of the money they would have made when you had white artists putting out cover, and the white artists didn't ask permission; they just did it.
They just did it.
Pat Boone,
that was part of the culture too,
permission.
Right?
Yeah.
And Brother Michael, that was part of the culture too. That wasn't
colonialism.
It's
music colonialism.
Right. They were colonizing the music.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that's a great point. All right, let me go to a couple of more points, and then I want to hear what your other point was, Brother Michael. Lady T is my first name. You said it's almost 3 hours talking about Black Panther. It definitely leaves you complete and content knowing what is coming in part 3. Facts.
Yeah.
And once you see the film, it feels, and here's the thing, and I don't know, and Lady T, Brother Michael B, when you see the film, this is the crazy. This is not crazy, but this is the power of film. And I know to you, this is this work that you always are working toward, right? We had a major real life moment in the death of Chadwick Boseman,
right?
That was taken and put into the storyline as a king who had fallen ill, who had died because of an illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about y'all. In theater, I was a theater major in high school at the Baltimore School for the Arts. So they talked about this thing, like in theater, you have this what they call the fourth wall, right? Where you don't penetrate through the fourth wall. You don't look directly in the audience when you're performing, right? But some pieces allow you to open up that fourth wall where you're doing a scene and then all of a sudden you're looking and talking to the audience. But the fourth wall that was broken down in this film was the fact that there was literally a death, a real mourning that was taking place, because our brother didn't die on film. He died in real life. So it almost felt like, and this is the crazy part, like I was a part of the story, not just watching the story. And I don't know if you got that sense and take, Brother Michael and B. Like you are a part of the story. Like when you heard them talking about T'Challa and who he was, you can clearly see from the actors' point of view, the actresses, that this wasn't an act, that this came up. You know what I mean? And it was just a very, very like unique and different space to be in with the movie, to have that level of connection. Because I cried. I ain't gonna lie, man. I cried throughout this film. The opening sequence. Don't you know how Marvel has that opening title sequence where it shows the name Marvel and it flashes all of its heroes and all of its characters. They changed that for this film where they only showed images of Chadwick. And normally it's done on the background with music playing in the back and and all this sound. Not for this film. It was like silence. And there was something that was sobering, but yet it was like you were a part of a funeral, but then you were a part of I mean, it just engrossed you in such a way. And I don't know, Brother Michael and B, like what that was. That feeling that could. Say it again?
The Conjuring.
Okay.
The Conjuring. All right. It's a tool. It's a tool we use to get through, to get over, all right, to get by, all of that. It's the Conjuring. All right. And it connects you to the vastness of time. All righty. And so then the second principle there would be time travel. All right. So in that moment, all right, not only was the spirit of Chadwick conjured, all right, for every person, all right. So that means that now his spirit is wrapping into this film for every person over and over and over again, which means that you are now traveling through time as well. Deeper than you did the first one, deeper than you did. And so these are true tools, all right, that Afrofuturists use in order to shift our world, all righty, in order to ensure that our place in the future is real and not made up. You understand? So like and all of these are tools that are within your DNA that your grandmother gave to you.
Right,
you know?
right.
So that's the difference between Black sci-fi and white sci-fi. All right, white sci-fi has to make you green, has to turn you into an avatar in order to connect. All right. All we have to do is mourn.
Yeah, I think that statement just said everything for me. It makes you, white sci-fi will make you feel like an avatar, but in this case, all you got to do is just be yourself and allow yourself to be human. Woo! All right, bro, Mike, you got the final word. We're gonna take a quick pause, but you got the final word on this.
Oh yeah, I would say this is African spirituality, because we see African culture, African spirituality throughout the first Black Panther and this one here also. But very quickly, B. Fly talked about reparations, and reparations coming from us repairing ourselves, partly at least. And when I talk about reparations, I'm all for repairing the damage of 246 years of slavery and decades of Jim Crow segregation, et cetera. But the concept of reparations means to repair, to restore you back to a state before the damage was done, before the harm was done. For reparations for African Americans, we first have to understand and analyze who African people were and what African people had before we were stripped of our history, culture, language, spiritual systems, folklore, mores, cosmology, nationality, and put into an institution of slavery. Too many people deal with reparations for slavery, but don't study who we were and what we had before slavery. We need to restore ourselves back to that, who we were before the trauma was done. Not just get a check, because if you give money to a mentally damaged people who've largely been taught to hate themselves and to see reality through the eyes of Europeans, what do you think they're going to do with it? Cash payments can be part of a comprehensive reparations package. In no way should cash payments only be the type of reparations, because if we all got $1 million today, white people have it all back by this time next week. And the only thing we would have done is stimulate their economy, and we would still be brain damaged. And the structural inequities that exist in the society because of the laws and policies that now distribute wealth, power, and resources into the hands of Europeans, those structural inequities will still be there. You haven't dealt with the damage and the harm. Okay, so we have to do a systems analysis when we deal with repairing the damage of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow segregation and racism.
Black people need to defragment their hard drive, basically, right? We need to defragment the hard drive.
Right, yeah. But we were a whole people before the damage happened. Yep. So our focus should be getting back to that state that we were before our history was interrupted with the transatlantic slave trade. Woo. Not just getting a check. You got to understand history to understand this.
This is the problem when you have B and Michael on at the same time. They open up too many damn conversations. Like, yo, I don't have that much time.
You got a good problem on your hands, brother.
We got good shows.
You know, brother Imhotep, I'm wondering though, you know, when we time travel all the way back, I think we'll find that there was a disease brewing that allowed slavery to happen, that allowed the colonists to trade Bibles for bodies. All right. So I wouldn't say that we need to go back to exactly where we were, but we do need to examine what was missing, where the greed was, where the disconnection was between the leaders and the people that allowed the transatlantic slave trade to actually exist, because it started on our motherland. So until there's a break, because honestly, I don't believe that reparation needs to happen by white men. Reparation needs to start with West Africa and Alabama, West Africa and Mississippi. There's a conversation that needs to exist, and there's an agreement that needs to be made that has nothing to do with white men and the patriarchy at this point. Because at the end of the day, you know, like brother Michael, I don't believe that we need to have our women circumcised, but a part of traditional African society totally stripped me of my clit. Do we go back there? Do we go back there in order to right the wrongs of the 300 years?
Hell no.
And that's why futurism is important, because we can look at the past, see where we went wrong, and write it for tomorrow.
Right. So that largely female circumcision, I'm against that. That largely comes after Arab invasions. And the reason why, see, we have to understand that Arabs were involved in enslaving African people for 900 to 1,000 years before the transatlantic slave trade happened. Mm-hmm. You had the East African slave trade, and Arab culture gets forced onto African people. And fighting against the Arabs for almost 1,000 years weakened Africa greatly when the transatlantic slave trade starts in 1441 with the Portuguese going into Mauritania. And it's going to be the teachings, unfortunately. And I say I wish we had never taught them, because everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. What the African Moors took into Europe when they go in 711 AD, led by Tariq ibn Ziyad, they take in the mathematics, they take in the what they call alchemy, which today we call chemistry. They take in the science, the astronomy, all this stuff. Everything we taught Europeans came back to kick us in the behind. Okay, so we have to. Yes, we need to go back before the damage was done, but also we have to filter out the harmful aspects of the culture that harmful aspects that seeped into African culture, and we have to deal with the conflicts between different ethnic groups as well, because because African people should not be killing African people. Okay, right. Even though Pan-Africanism did not start on the continent of Africa, that starts in the United States and the Caribbean. We should not be fighting against one another, but we have to go back to who we were before this damage was done, before the Arabs invaded as well. Africa was not a utopia, it was not perfect, but it was a lot better, largely speaking, than what we're dealing with today. Okay, and in many African societies, you know, before the Arab influence, women had equal rights, full equal rights. Okay, so we have to. What we don't want to do is we don't want to dress up white male patriarchy in a red, black, and green dashiki and pass that off as African culture. We don't want to do that either.
Look, I want. Hey, look. So many people in the chat right now, feeling the energy and the vibe right now from both of you. Right. So the conversation is going, and I told my brother Damon Blissett, he was like, Farajii, how you gonna end the day show? Laughing emojis, right? However the spirit takes us, brother. You know what I'm saying? Because we build it. This is exactly what the culture is, because here's the reality, right? When you have big cultural moments that we see, that we're engaged in, whether with Black Panther, and the next segment, I'm gonna try to keep it short, is around Dave Chappelle and what he said on Saturday Night Live. Right. We got to have those, just take a moment, because these are moments that we can turn into opportunities to have discussions about a larger picture, a lot of different things. And a lot of people, you know, Brother Michael and B, like a lot of people, we just kind of glaze over these things and say, oh, this is not important. I'm gonna tell y'all, culture is one of the most identity defining forces in the country. It defines our identity. It defines our history. It speaks to how we take in messages. It speaks to how we express ourselves. So we can't just undermine or don't see the value of culture. Now look, I'm gonna just end this right here, because people getting on me and say, Farajii, y'all giving way too many spoilers about this film. So we're gonna stop it right here. What spoilers do
we give away?
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in Black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, I wanted to jump in here. Let's start the conversation off. A little bit of politics, talking about your favorite former president. I shouldn't say that because some people probably actually like the guy. So we're talking about former President Donald Trump, who, again, earlier this week has announced that he's running for president. This will be his third attempt. This is his third announcement about presidency. And as a result of this announcement, there has been a lot of movement within the GOP, the Republican Party, to try to figure out what to do with a guy like Donald J. Trump. Now, folks that are close to him, according to the reports and according to what people are saying, folks that are close to him are starting to even think twice about him running for office again in the midst of federal investigations, in the midst of January 6th committee hearings, in the midst of it's just not good for business, in the midst of DeSantis winning strong in Florida, and he possibly would be a better candidate on the GOP side, in the midst of it's just not good for business. Got a lot of things going on. But the former president said, yep, I'm still moving forward, and guess what? I can get the votes. Well, it looks like some of the people that are close to the president, i.e. the evangelicals, these are the religious right. These are the people who believe that he is anointed. Well, that's what at least they said when he became president the first time. They thought he was anointed to do their role. Now they're turning the other cheek. Yeah, like how I said that. They're turning the other cheek, and apparently they are deciding to fade away. Yeah, the evangelicals are saying that the president is not good for what they want to see happen. And essentially, he used them. Donald Trump using people. How's that happen? So let me just share with you what's been mentioned about the former president. Take a look at this. This is from a report from the Huffington Post, how they talked about this issue, how they're saying that the evangelicals are moving away, and they are questioning whether he really is the person they thought he would be. Yeah. All right, so take a look. Evangelical figures, this is the thing. They figured that they turn on Trump, and when he essentially said he used us. Evangelical figures who previously supported Donald Trump are backing off now that he's announced his third bid for the presidency. According to Mike Evans, he was a major evangelical, he said Donald Trump can't save America. He can't even save himself. Ouch. Mike Evans was part of a group of evangelicals who met with Trump at the White House and at one point gave him an award. Now he says he's done with Trump. According to Mike, he said he used us to win the White House. We had to close our mouths and eyes when he said things that horrified us. I cannot do that anymore. Really? You can't forget. And Robert Jeffries, who was one of Trump's evangelical advisors during the 2016 campaign, a longtime supporter, said he's not ready to endorse the former president either. Are we surprised, folks? Are we surprised? One time, you can fool me once. What George Bush said, you remember that that moment? He said, you can fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on you. Well, I don't know if the president is going to be able to get the evangelical right over to his side, considering everything else that has happened. But this speaks to a real problem, folks, that I think is really a microcosm of a macrocosmic problem in America. And it's funny, if y'all read this article in the Post, it's like, oh, he used us, and now people on Twitter are like responding like, wait a minute, but y'all used him too. See, we're in this age and time, especially when it comes to politics, that we tend to use people, and I'm just throwing out this word. We do tend to use people to get what we want. They work as long as they are a means to an end, right? But even though they may not they may, and I see some voters. I mean, as voters, we do the same thing. We say, oh, well, this person, they stand for economic development, they have a business, or this person stands for this issue, and I like that. But you can't separate one issue. You can't take like slice of the person without taking the whole person. You have to take the whole person when you're looking at power, when you're looking at political power, right? So you can't put a man into office, a woman into office, who has, out of the 10 things that you like to see happen politically, they touch on 3 to 4 of those things, and therefore they become your candidate. That just doesn't make sense. And then you expect the other six to 7 parts of them to not interfere, to not be a problem. That doesn't make sense. Like really, when you go to the polls, when we vote for people, we got to vote for the whole person. Isn't that what we always say, especially in the relationship space? Yeah, I want you to come and be your authentic self. I want you to be the whole person. But we don't expect the same from political figures, which is interesting because we want these sparse things from our political figures. And unfortunately, folks, there's, you're not going to, you can't a la carte. Well, I guess you really can. Who is going to be the president? There's only one person that's going to be president. There's only one person that's going to be the governor, or your state representative, or a city council person, or your judge, or Supreme Court justice. There's only you really got to take the whole person. And that's why it's better for you to choose somebody that is more closely aligned to the majority of your values and to your beliefs than it is to align yourself to someone who is partially aligned to the majority of your values. It's the same conversation, and we can open this up, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Culture Crew. It's a conversation about, that we're having about the Republican Party and Black folks. And this is just me. I'm just this little old Farajii Muhammad. But it's the same thing, I think, that we can say about the Republican Party. Like, we can say, oh, let's go to the Republican Party and let's get something from there. But you got to take the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? Now, there's no party that says, look, I'm half Republican, I'm half libertarian, I'm half socialist, democratic socialist, and I'm all, and the rest of me. There's no party that speaks to every element of you, right? That's fine. But there is actually we can say the independent party, right? That's a little bit broad. But when we're talking about political power, when we're talking about how do we advance our political agenda, then it does get into a space where we have to choose people that are more aligned with our values and beliefs. Look, I'm not crying any crocodile tears for these evangelicals, because guess what? You mean to tell me a man like Donald Trump, who has been around for 30, 40, 50 years or so, I mean, either on the periphery or even, in the conversation, you mean to tell me that a man who says that he grabs women by their private parts, this is acceptable to evangelicals? That's God's will. You mean to tell me that a man who has said some of the things he said, done some of the things that he has done, that you didn't know that? Oh, come on. So let's stop the BS, right? Let's stop acting like, oh my God, he used us. He does not have some magic ray that he just points at you. Remember that little device in Men in Black? Y'all remember Men in Black? Y'all remember that movie, that Will Smith movie, right? Remember the little device they said, okay, we're going to, at this moment, you didn't see anything. And they hold up like a pen. It looked like a pen. And they was just like, guess what? Good night. And then you're supposed to forget all that just happened to you seeing the alien. That doesn't happen in real life, folks. I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen. You got to take the whole person. We have to bring, and we have to acknowledge the whole self. And personally, I don't know about you, as a Black person, as much as I have a problem with some issues with the Democratic Party, and as much as I have some pride, I can't ride with somebody who speaks to 2/10 of who I am, right? Just because I want to have a job, or just because I want to start a business, And I think, oh, this person is the best qualified to handle economics, or this person is the best. And then you have your morality, your character, all of that is just tossed to the side. Just doesn't work that way. But I may be wrong. That's why I'm asking you. Let's go to you, Culture Crew, hear what's exactly what you got to say. And then I'm going to bring my guy Rashad in so we can certainly hear your thoughts. Let me go to my comments here. Where's my comments? There we go. All right. Let's go to some of these comments. I'm not seeing some of them, making sure that I can see them. All right. Let's go to, and let's hear from me. Let me do this first. Let me backtrack. Let's get Rashad in, get his take on it, and then we'll hear from some of the comments from our Culture Crew. Rashad, my big brother, who is a Culture Crew member. He's a nonprofit leader doing some great work, all around good guy, but he's an activist and advocate. All right, Rashad. So these evangelicals are like, oh, he used us. Oh, oh. Either you take him or you don't.
Hey, bro, I want happy Friday, happy holidays.
Happy Friday, Rashad.
You got to my favorite holiday of the week. It's one that I look forward to celebrating. So we're gonna put that out there first.
Right.
And I posted something on my social media the other day, and I simply just uploaded a cap, right? And it just was that cap. Like, that's just been my word for the last, society for the last 2 weeks. Like, we've been capping at this highest altitude that we have ever seen. All of this is cap. But I will say, in the base of strength and asset approach, right? It's refreshing. One in particular to hear that, one of the immediate steps to change is admitting fault, right? And acknowledging your past mistakes. So let's give them that benefit of the doubt as a gainful win, right? That this particular entity has taken its approach to understand how they was corralled into an agenda that was bigger than themselves for ultimate place of some political figure that is out for their own personal gain, and that they saw that they were being corralled for this type of agenda, to know that, 4 years later, that they can endorse the same thing that they unknowingly or did knowingly know that they were endorsing and have seen those implications. For them to take that stance, it says a level of self-awareness and reflection on their end, because without those votes, without them using their seat of influence to galvanize those voters based off of their faith-based ideologies, they are now at a space of awareness to say, we can't continue to be repetitive in this and open up our fellowship and our patrons to go behind a candidate that they can't vocalize and actually say, you know what, this is attached to our standards and our beliefs. Because one, like you said, we're not going to find this whole elected official that covers all bases. But at the same time, we have to have some pillars of what our foundations, our priorities, and our values are. And we have to, as a collective, not be willing to compromise out of self-interest.
Bro, let me just say this. I'm with you 100%. And the reason I bring this up is because I often hear conversations like this in the Black community, right? Where we expect our, there are two scenarios at play. Mm-hmm. One scenario is that some Black folks, for example, expect their political leaders to be Jesus. I call it the Jesus factor, right? Mm-hmm. Where we expect them to be 100% noble and righteous. No dirt on them. No thought of doing anything illegal, right? No thought of going into a seat of power, not connecting with some other people that are doing illegal stuff. And we expect them to rise above it. I don't expect that. And I'm talking about from Black political leaders. Black folks think, some Black folks think that way about Black political leadership, that they're supposed to be the modicum of civility and righteousness in the dirty world of American politics.
Imagine that.
Then you got other Black folks who are kind of on some other Black folks who are like, no, they don't, because this Black political leader don't speak to this, then this, I'm therefore going to jump ship and thinking about going someplace else, right? The balance, That's what I'm getting to. We got to find the balance, right? Because this situation here with the evangelicals' relationship with Trump just goes to show you, like in America, you know, the old thing in America is there's separation between church and state.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's not true. And here's the thing. We think that when the pastor gets, they say, oh, the pastor gets political, right? Why is the pastor speaking into world affairs? You're supposed to be speaking to human spirituality, because world affairs affect human spirituality. Like, why is that so crazy? Why we can't? Jesus, if we want to get real, if we want to get very specific, Jesus was going to war with the Pharisees and the government of his day.
With this state of his time. Those were the
So if the Jesus of 2,000 years ago was alive today, would he not be going to war with the forces of evil and oppression in the United States of America? Or do you think he would tell people, hey, man, turn the other cheek? Or, hey, brother, don't worry about them. God. See, the thing is that our view of
Farajii.
Hey, bro, no, it don't make no sense, because the view that we have of spiritual people is weakness. It really comes from that space, right? We think that because you're spiritual, you are weak and meek, that you don't supposed to have a say, or you're just supposed to bless everyone. And no, God gets angry, God gets mad, right? We try to create this other narrative around the spiritual conversation. So the point I'm making is, if you want to, okay, fine, you are an evangelical pastor. You saw an opportunity to connect with a candidate who spoke your language, who can move your agenda further along. And in city after city, you can't tell me, because I've been in those rooms, Rashad. You know that there are pastors that buddy up to the mayors, city council people, and other people in political power because they want to get money for their church. Can the church say amen? They want to get that. They want to get that land, right? They're trying to open up a school, right? Right? They want to create a building fund, or this fund or that fund,
right? Say it.
And guess what? That relationship in some ways are transactional.
Yep, exactly. And that's what we experienced here. And it's at the place of them renegotiating what their transactional relationship will look like. Right. And because that is a stain on their political resume of a candidate whom they endorse publicly. And we are seeing those implications to the candidate that they rally behind. It's now in this time, in this light, in the social climate that we're in, do we attach our name for the second time around? And you're seeing this as it's a transactional report. And that's what we need to do in all the different sectors, all the different agencies, all the different institutions, all the different elected officials, all the community organizers, to assess, right, with a level of discernment of what position did they take in a space, when did they speak up, and when did they go silent. And that article itself speaks to them, and they openly admitted that after giving endorsements, there were certain points that he made publicly that they could not rally behind or publicly endorse further because they got out of the alignment of what they were trying to go to. And that's what
I'm gonna just say to him, it's bull. It's bull, bro. That's what it is. It's bull. Don't get holier than thou. No, bro. You were wrong. You were wrong a year ago. You were wrong 3 years ago. You were wrong 6 years ago. You gave the man the award. You said that. I literally remember. Y'all remember that moment where they were talking about some pastors they had around him, and he was like, we truly believe he was anointed. Oh man, he was anointed to this. Oh yeah, he was anointed. He's not the Antichrist. No, we're not giving him that much power. He ain't that. He ain't that. He ain't that strong and powerful as y'all think. But But y'all anointed him. Y'all did the anointing. Y'all did the appointing. Y'all made him bigger than life. Y'all made it seem like God's hands was Trump's hand. No, bro. The voice got to get high, Rashad.
No, stay over there. Now.
I'm not going for that. I wouldn't go from that from white evangelicals, and I damn sure won't go for that from black evangelicals. You know what I'm saying? That's not you. That's not. And I think for us as the constituents and the citizens, look, man, I don't have, again, your pastor's going to have to get political. He's going to have to say something. You can't, I mean, of course, Jesus says, I'm in the world, but I'm not of it. But you can certainly speak about what's going on in the world, right? And bring it home to how people can live in it, right? So we're at that place right now. We're at that place. And I don't like how, no, y'all trying to save face. Because if somebody might say the same thing about Ron DeSantis. Somebody might say the same thing about some other, crazy GOP, right winger. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these guys, they attach their politics to their faith. Because if black folks did that, come on now, let's keep it real. If black folks we accept that on the conservative side. Oh, this is their faith. Therefore, Mike Pence going around talking about his book. His book is what's the name of Mike Pence's book, y'all? God help me. You going around, man, damn near threatened your life. And you going around talking about, I'm not going to say nothing to the January 6th committee, or God put me in this position. Bruh. Now you playing between putting God into your madness, right? And then that turns the people off. So what do you say to your flock? What do you say to your fellows? What do you say to your congregation?
Hey, I was just about to say, you're going to either be a scapegoat or you're going to be a shepherd. But there's a whole difference between it. And we have to be able to understand how they show up in it. Like, that's all I can say, brother. We're going to either allow these folks to continue to scapegoat, or we're going to hold them accountable to be the shepherds of what we need to move this pendulum forward, bro. And that's all it comes down to.
And black folks can't do that. See, they tell black folks, and I'm saying the conservatives tell black folks, don't include your faith into this situation. You got black political leaders that can't even really express their faith, right? But then on the conservative side, they say that their faith serves as the root of their political stance. It's a double standard. It's expected. But now when you get pulled to the carpet, don't start backing down now. Don't start backing down now. But that's just the weakness of your expression of faith. That's your. I'm not going to say, oh, that's not Jesus' fault. That's your fault, bro. That's your weakness. And you need to feel the full brunt of telling people to follow a man who you knew was not good to follow. Morally, spiritually, psychologically. But you put it yourself out there. Now you're trying to backtrack. Well, that's between you and your God. But at this point, I don't care. Like, you can cry crocodile tears all day, bro. Talking about he used us. Well, your ass needed to get used because you that dumb. That's how I feel about it. All right, let me take a couple of things because we're going to have to get to our next conversation. LaShonda, you said they act like a chick that didn't know that a guy only wanted her for sex. Damn. When he was given clear signs that it is all he wanted, but you think that you are so different. Dang. That's true.
Hey, I was waiting for that comment, bro. She nailed that. That's the analogy right there. That's the coffin and the nail. Rolling it. That was it.
Hey, yo, it's Friday already, son. Wow. Tiana, you said they were trying to protect whiteness. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Janae, you said, wait, So it was transactional with laughing emojis. Oh, yes. It was very transactional.
But that's what politics is. Politics is a transactional exchange. That's literally what it means in the definitive of it.
Come on.
Right on. Couldn't have made it any more.
That's what it is. That's what it is. It's a compromise, but it's a transactional compromise, right? You do this, I do that. You get this, I get that. We friends because of that relationship. Now, if we become different friends, that's fun. Look, I'm clear. It's very simple. Very simple. I'm clear. Like when I was doing the radio show in Baltimore, folks, I knew that certain political leaders, they only liked me because I had a platform. They only liked me, hey, Farajii. And I was able to use the platform and bring them on and all of that. But it was very transactional. I was clear in that relationship. Like, oh, y'all only cool with me because if you probably thought something of me. But it's cool. It's cool. But you got to be clear about the relationships that you're in, especially when it comes to those who represent power and influence. You got to be clear about that.
do.